Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to do a couple of things. So first is I want to introduce the 5 schools of Zen thoughts. I mentioned the two main schools already, the Rinzai school and the Soto school, the Chinese version, the Linji and the Caodong, which I'll mention again today. But there were 3 other schools, all of which got incorporated into the Rinzai school eventually, or the Linji school. So we're going to look at those, and then we'll look at 2 Zen teachers, and then a third family of Zen teachers. So that's what my plan is for today. Okay, so those are the figures that we'll be looking at. Shihtou, Matsu, and the Peng family. So we'll be looking at those at them in just a bit. But first, let's take a look at these schools of Zen, sometimes referred to as 5 houses of Zen. Guiyang, Linji, Faiyan, Yunmen, and Caodong. So those are the 5 schools, and you'll hear these referred to throughout the readings. So this is just a quick introduction to what they are. So the first of them is Guiyang, and this is the first sort of formal school of Chang. And a few things that characterized it. So first of all, it like the others that become part of the Linji school, used koans to a great degree. So they use these stories that we've been talking about, of interactions between teacher and student, as a method of trying to aid a student towards enlightenment. There was an attempted revival later on in the 20th century. So people that found some insight in this school, and so it more or less died, but there have been some attempts at revival of the Guiyang school. The Linji school. So this is the first of the 2 major schools that continues to this day. Founded in the 9th century by Linji. It also relies on koans. And over time, this became more and more important. And I think the influence of these other schools on Linji, or on the Linji school, not Linji himself, but on the Linji school, kind of created a koan school out of Linji. The Linji school began to, kind of like we got with the Buddhist councils, we got a formalization of much of the scriptures, which included some major catalogs of koans, the most important of which is the Blue Cliff record, 100 koans in the Blue Cliff record, can be studied sort of as a textbook of koans. So we get that as an important part of the Linji school. A form of meditation, Shihtou, uses usually a portion of a koan, so not the entire koan. So something like the mu, that negation, or one hand clapping, or something, kind of as a mantra, right? So using it as a mechanism, a way of returning concentration, but also as a way to continue to work on the koan at perhaps a not fully conscious level, right? It becomes part of the breath, becomes part of the rhythm of the meditation. And so that became a method of meditation, which is important in Linji. And again, it develops into the Rinzai school of Zen, which is a very important school in Japan, as well as now in Europe and the United States. It's the Linji school. And then and then finally there's the, well, I'll get to the Caodong, but of the Lin of those that became part of the Linji, the Faiyan and the Yunmen schools also relied heavily on koans for study. Matsu, who we'll look at today, helped develop these schools, or was the sort of founder in a sense of these schools. And then Yun Men was one of these figures in Zen that was known for his very direct and very drastic methods in teaching Zen, right? Ways of trying to sort of break open the students' conceptual apparatus, engaging in a very direct and sometimes violent way, including sort of physical violence, hitting, yelling, and so on, right? So we hear about this in some of the Zen schools, and it was an important part of this Yunmen method of teaching Zen. So those are the Linji schools, or the schools that became part of Linji. And then we got the Caodong school, named after two Zen teachers, Dongshen and Kaoshan. Caodong, so in transliterated into Japanese, becomes Soto, and we'll see its origins in Shihtou. What characterizes the Caodong school is its form of meditation. So reliance on seated meditation, downplaying the use of koans, and this form of meditation called silent illumination, or just sitting, what becomes shikantanza in Japanese Zen, but a way of open awareness, non-concentrative form of meditation. Just allow things to be as they are, right? This idea that enlightenment is the sitting itself, right? That there's no distinction. It's not that there's a goal, right? So downplay this idea of there being a goal, something to be reached. You can hear, I think, the influence of Taoism in this approach to Zen. So that's the Caodong school. So who are these figures that helped shape these schools? Again, we're not going to talk about Linji today, but we'll talk about Shihtou and Matsu. So Shihtou, again, was very influenced by Taoism. Right, we get a way of interpreting Buddhist concepts, from a fairly Taoist perspective. This idea that mind is Buddha, right, or the person is Buddha nature, right? That there's no separation between person as they are in their ordinary state, their unenlightened state, right, and Buddha nature itself. Right, there's no distinction to be drawn between the conventional world and the ultimate world. He had this dream, this sort of vision, where he was with Hui Neng riding on a tortoise, and he interpreted this as the tortoise representing wisdom, right, understanding, right view, so on. And the tortoise, right, the depths of the water or whatever, were an expression of the nature of being, right, reality itself. And so we get this sort of mystical experience that Shihtou interprets as an expression of Buddhist principles. He had two major works. So the Sandokai, or coincidence of opposites, and then Song of the Grass Roof Hermitage. I think there are parts of both of these in your reading. So the Song of the Grass Roof Hermitage, first of all, was a way of sort of expressing um, um, our human reality, right? In a metaphor, and sort of this grass hut being an expression of the self, right? The inside this grass hut is the monk, the practitioner, the person, right? But that's sort of true nature. And there's a sense in which that grass hut and the self, the what's inside, become one. There's no strong distinction between the two. And then this other work, the coincidence of opposites. So it grounded itself within the Bodhidharma works, the ones attributed to Bodhidharma. Of course, we have several works that were to be written by Bodhidharma, but likely were not. But anyway, Shihtou relies heavily on these works. So first of all, he finds this this sort of fight between the northern and southern schools, or the Shen-Sui Huineng division, to be false, right? That these two different approaches to Zen just point to the same thing, right? And so so these various schools that arise later on, right? They're false schools, right? They're or they're just different approaches that different teachers have, right? And that's it. There's nothing essential to these different approaches. He was very concerned with this idea of grasping, that in the spiritual path, that we can end up grasping onto spiritual ideas, right? So things like enlightenment or nirvana, right? That itself can become an obstacle to enlightenment or to nirvana, right? We create a goal, this thing that we're after, we grasp onto it, we hold on to it, and then we become attached to it. We become attached to the idea of it, and this gets in the way of practice, right? We no longer are practicing, right? We're just thinking about this idea that we're after, and so the goal then is to sort of let go even of that, right? To be goalless, to be aimless. Right? The Heart Sutra and Nagarjuna emphasize this as well, right? That nirvana is empty, just as much as samsara is empty. Tries to undercut any sort of dualism, right? So that's samsara and nirvana dualism, right? They're understood against one another, right? So they're only understood in relationship to the other. They're a created division or dichotomy. Light and darkness are complementary, right? That we don't understand lightness without darkness and darkness without light. So at base, all things are non-dual, right? These dichotomies are false. And then we get this charge at the end of the coincident opposites, right? Student of the mystery, I humble urge you, don't waste a moment, night or day, right? So the work of realization, the spiritual path, is something that's urgent, right? Don't waste your time in suffering. Rather engage in it wholeheartedly, right here, right now. Okay, so that's Shihtou. Matsu. Matsu, who again can be seen as the beginning of this line towards Linji or schools that became part of the Linji. Also was very interested in Buddha nature and mind, right? And so the realization that Matsu had was not distinct from that of Shihtou. So important to remember. Matsu was known for, again, some of these aggressive techniques, yelling and shouting and hitting and so on, right, that get incorporated into the Lenji and Rinzai paths. He and it's interesting, right? So he at times criticizes seated meditation, and the reason he criticizes it is because he sees it as being used as a means towards an end, right? That the seated meditation is the method or the means towards the ends of enlightenment. And so he criticizes it for that reason, saying that there's this dichotomy that's been created. In the same way that those from the Caodong school might criticize Koan study as a means towards ends issue, right? That people get hung up on the Koans themselves and get attached to those rather than understanding them in their context. So the concern is the same, right? That's this division between means and ends. It's just, from the outside of the tradition, right? You might criticize something that you see as dangerous, and then the other side might look at you and say, well, what you're doing is dangerous. So he's very prominent in the Blue Cliff record. As well as the transmission of the lamp, right? Another of these groups of koans. Emphasized sudden enlightenment, or so it seems, right? This koan method seems to emphasize that, where there's these sudden breakthroughs by students. So that's Matsu. Here's a famous story of Matsu and Pai Cheng. Pai Cheng we'll talk about in just a moment. So Pai Cheng was the student of Matsu. So once great ancestor Ma and Pai Cheng were taking a walk when a wild duck flew by. What's that? Asked Master Ma. Wild duck. Said Pai Cheng, where did it go? It flew away. Great ancestor twisted Bai Cheng's nose, and Bai Cheng cried out in pain. When did it fly away? Asked the great ancestor. Right. So, of course, we can interpret this in how we see fit, and maybe spending time trying to interpret it runs counter to the practice. But of course, the dualistic nature of Pai Cheng's answers is what Matsu is criticizing, right? What he's sort of taking on. That the sound is and the event is distinct from the individuals. That the duck flew away, right? It's like that there was sort of the moment where the duck was there in front of them, and now the duck is gone, right? All of this way of thinking is seen as potentially dualistic, right? And Matsu is sort of calling Pai Cheng on. Well, Pai Cheng's just like, oh, we're walking. I'm just telling you what's going on, right? What's up with you? And of course, Matsu's like, well, I'm always teaching you, right? Like that's my job. So I also showed this to highlight that again, that sort of physical, violent sort of interaction that can occur between teacher and students. So what about Pai Cheng? So Pai Cheng said that reality is not something that we can describe, right? Um, that writing about what reality is like, Buddha nature, the way, or whatever term we use, um, avoids what is true. However, that this emphasis indicates that the Pai Ching believed there was something, right? That there was a reality. It's just that that reality couldn't be talked about. It was indescribable. Only thing to be said about it is what is not, right? That apophatic tradition. He did not reject scholarship. He believed that the scholarship was fine. He just said that scholarship is not the primary way toward realization. So Buddhism was to be studied in practice, right? And scholarship could support that, but it was not to be to take the place of true study, which was meditation and koan study and working with a teacher and reciting the sutras and so on. He tried to revitalize monasticism under the Chan within the Chan school. So developed a set of monastic rules that he believed were appropriate for Chan Buddhism, that were distinct from those Theravada based rules of monasticism. He does have some things to say about seeking knowledge, right? Understanding is the province of desire, and desire turns into disease. So remember, this is the primary disease of Buddhism, is the suffering that arises from desire. He advocated that we be detached from detachment itself. Right. So just like this idea of being detached from enlightenment, right? Also being detached from the virtue of detachment, right? So don't sort of take this as a rule that you adhere to that has any sort of special importance in and of itself, right? Rather become detached from that itself. He emphasized the need for realization before virtue, right? Virtue doesn't lead to realization. Understanding doesn't lead to realization. Rather, realization leads to true knowledge. Realization leads to true virtue. When I understand the way the world is, right? If I understand interdependence and all those things, because I have a true realization of the world, of reality, right? Then virtue is going to come into play in and of itself, right? But we don't get there by doing the right things. It's not that I can, work hard on following the 5 precepts and then I'm going to have understanding. So right now, just have no anger, no love, right? So, these are sort of dichotomous ideas, have neither of these, have no anger, no love. This is passing through mountains, rivers, and stone walls, right? This is what is miraculous, is being able to exist without love and without anger. So that's Pai Chang. Oh, I think I have one more quote from Pai Chang. So Pai Chang says, in the teaching hall, the master said, the spiritual light shines alone, far transcending the senses in their fields. The essential substance is exposed, real and eternal. Right? So there's a spiritual light. We see the substance for what it truly is, real and eternal. It is not contained in written words, right? Of that apophatic nature. not contained in written words, not contained in spoken words. It is basically perfect and complete in itself. Just get rid of delusive attachments and merge with realization of thusness. So true understanding comes about, right, when we've given up our discursive engagement with it, we've given up our arguments over things. Right? That's when true realization occurs. All right. And then finally, the Pangs. The Pang family, mother, father, and a daughter, were all Buddhist practitioners. They were lay practitioners, right? So none of them were monastics. And it's one of those important stories of lay people within Zen Buddhism. You know, we still seem to get the preference towards monasticism, towards a leaving behind a family and so on, right? But here the Pang family is held up as important examples of Zen Buddhists, Zen Buddhist practitioners, and so you know the lay path is open as well. There's a dialogue which I think is sort of an interesting dialogue with the Pangs. So Layman Pang was sitting in his thatched cottage one day studying the sutras. Mr. Pang says, difficult, difficult, like trying to scatter 10 measures of sesame seed all over a tree. Mrs. Pang says, no, easy, easy, like touching your feet to the ground when you get out of bed. And it's Mr. Pang sitting there, you know, running up against these scriptures, trying to understand, you know, the right path and understand reality and so on. Things, you know, Pang's like, no, it's easy. It's like touching your feet to the ground, right? You need to stop grasping, let go. And then we have the Pang's daughter, Ling Zhao, saying, neither difficult nor easy. On the 100 grass tips, the great masters meet, right? So it's not difficult, it's not easy, right? It's just what it is. So who was Layman Pang, right? And often it's just discussed as Layman Pang, but his entire family plays an important role. So he was a merchant, and he spent his life with his family. Sort of, they all went along for the ride in search for the true Buddhism. He studied with both Shihtou and Matsu, and so both of these different methods, you know, the sort of seated meditation method and this koan method, and both of them he received realization through. Right, this is common. It's still common where a student, you know, maybe is in one school and is advised by their teacher to go and seek a teacher from the other school, right? Because of the benefit of kind of looking at reality from that other lens. So he is seen as carrying or sort of playing the role, right, of this important lay practitioner, somebody who could engage with Zen Buddhism without becoming a full renunciant. And Layman Pang shows up in many different koans, not always the most flattering koans, but is seen as worthy of those discussions. And he also has his own poetry that he composed. So that's the Pangs. So we'll end there, and we'll just continue our journey through more Zen teachers next time. So thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon.